Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex Sedov, and I am a cadet under officer from 703 City of Fremantle Squadron, Australian Air Force Cadets. It is my honour to be your Master of Ceremonies. Thank you for attending the 44th Battalion Memorial Service. This will be the 6th hour of the service, and there will be 8 more to go throughout the day. I would like to start by recognising the special guests and support we have present for this ceremony. Christine Tonkin, MLA, the Mayor of South Perth, Greg Milner, Mr. Jonathan Huston, Aquinas College, David Cusworth from the Western Australian Fire and Emergency Services Band, and the Scotch College Pipe Band. I now ask everyone to please stand for the mounting of the catafalque party. Thank you. Please be seated. I now call on the Director of the 44th Australian Infantry Battalion Memorial, Mr. Luca Muir Anderson, to explain the ceremony, mimicking the raising ceremony.
Thank you. My name is Luca Muir Anderson. I'm the founder and director of the 44th Australian Infantry Battalion Memorial and the great-grandson of John McKeon, who served in that unit. I am also a trooper in the Australian Army Reserves. I created the 44th Battalion Memorial in March of this year because I saw a real lack of recognition for this particular unit. It was one of 5 battalions raised in Western Australia during the Great War. However, it is the only one to no longer exist, having been disbanded in 1960. As such, it has started to become forgotten over the years. They do not have their own physical cenotaph, and until now, they did not have their banner marched on Anzac Day. The stories of the thousands of men who served with the battalion and the 482 who gave the supreme sacrifice in the defence of our country are at real risk of fading away. This is the first memorial service dedicated solely to the 44th Battalion in many years, as the old association ceased to exist long ago. There will be 15 ceremonies today, going from dawn until dusk, each one representing a different battle and having different songs, poems and stories. The names of all the soldiers on the 44th Battalion Honour Roll will be read throughout the day. There is an honour guard, band and speakers present throughout the whole day, and the main ceremony will take place at 11 a.m, where His Excellency the Governor of Western Australia, Chris Dawson AC APM, will review the memorial. Our memorial aims to keep the individual stories of the soldiers alive. We do this through our interactive website, which details how many days a specific soldier was at the front line, what awards they earned, what battles they fought in, when they were sick, what they did before the war, and who their family were. This is quite a demanding project, as even if we complete 1 soldier a day, it would take over 6 years to complete. Luckily, many members of the community donate their time to complete the biographies of these soldiers. The memorial also conducts ceremonies for individual soldiers, the goal being to individually commemorate every soldier in the battalion. We have done 12 of those smaller ceremonies in the suburbs of Perth, the towns of the Wheatbelt, and with the Swedish Embassy in Canberra, commemorating nearly 70 soldiers so far. We also had Christchurch Grammar School create a faithful copy of the 44th Battalion banner, which was signed by the Mayor of Claremont, then marched on Anzac Day this year. I thank you all for attending and hope that you find this a meaningful service.
Thank you, Director. I will now read out the story of the 44th Battalion, Australian Imperial Force. Raised in Claremont in January 1916, it was the last battalion to be raised in Western Australia during the war. It originally left Western Australia with 1,000 men under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Mansbridge on the 6th of June 1916 and arrived in England the following month to continue their training. They nicknamed themselves Old Bill's Thousand. Another 1,500 men would join the 44th Battalion as reinforcements over the following 18 months. The 44th Battalion Australian Imperial Force arrived in France in late November 1916, and the following months was sent to the front line of the Armentières sector. Over a period of 3 months, the battalion suffered nearly 70 killed from constant attritional warfare. From May to August 1917, the 44th Battalion fought brutal engagements in Messines and suffered nearly 130 killed in the deadliest overall engagement for the unit. Lieutenant Colonel James Clark took over command of the unit after the battle and will remain in command until the end of the war. The deadliest month of their entire service came in October 1917, shortly after the Battle of Messines, where they were committed to hellish fighting at Passchendaele and Bloodshed. In the span of less than 3 weeks, the battalion suffered over 90 killed and 750 wounded or sick, a casualty rate of 84%. After months of recovering, the 44th Battalion was desperately committed to slow down the advance of the German Spring Offensive from March to May 1918, suffering nearly 60 killed, but successfully halting the enemy advance in one of the most chaotic operations of the war, often not knowing where the front line was. On the 4th of July 1918, the West Australians fought alongside the Americans in one of their first engagements, the Battle of Hamel, suffering 30 killed in a single day. The month of August 1918 saw the battalion fight and win in 2 decisive battles, the Battle of Amiens and the Second Battle of the Somme. From this point onward, the Imperial German Army was in constant retreat until the end of the war 100 days later. The battalion suffered only 25 killed during these battles, but seized vast amounts of territory and took many prisoners. The final operation of the war for the 44th Battalion was to cross St. Quentin Canal and take Mount Quentin, and breach the heavily defended Hindenburg Line. This occurred on the 29th of September 1918, and all the 44th Battalion's objectives were seized on the first day, though at the cost of 30 killed. For the remainder of the war, the 44th Battalion was now down to just company strength as reinforcements had ceased arriving for half a year. Only 80 men were capable of fighting. As such, it conducted rear duties until the armistice. During the war, the 44th Battalion fought nearly 24 engagements and received 16 battle honours. 2,642 men had served with the battalion, of whom 1,793 had become casualties, with 482 paying the supreme sacrifice. This represented a casualty rate of 68% and a death rate of 18%. For their service, members of the battalion received 125 awards for gallantry in action, 19 awards for leadership in action, 5 awards for other acts of service, 11 foreign awards from the United States, Belgium, and France, and 1 man was anointed into an Order of Chivalry. After the war, the 44th Battalion was reformed as a Citizens Military Forces unit, consisting of 3 companies in Perth and 1 company in Bunbury. In the 1920s, it received King's Colours, regimental colours, a cap badge depicting a grass tree, a motto, an alliance with the Essex Regiment, and their regimental name became the West Australian Rifles. This unit continued to serve until 1960, being on home defence duties during the Second World War. Its lineage continues on today as the Royal West Australian Regiment. I now call on Aquinas College to read out the story of the Big Raid.
My name is Alfie Heron, and I'm from Aquinas College, and I will be reading the story of the Big Raid. February 1917 provided a 3-week spell of bitterly cold weather. The ground was frozen hard for 18 inches below the surface, and this made it almost impossible to rebuild any earthworks or trenches which the German shells destroyed. The parapet was temporarily repaired with sandbags of frozen earth. The day the thaw came, these places sagged very low, and so gradually that the happening was not noticed until an opposing sniper had a snapshot. Life in the front line was almost unbearable. The sentries, wrapped up in mufflers, leather waistcoats, greatcoats, and with fingerless gloves, found their tour of duty to be one of the most intolerable torture. The cold was so intense it even froze on the guns the non-freezable oil, issued especially for the Lewis gun, which with the result that the guns were unworkable until thawed. While occupying the armoury sector, the 44th Battalion carried out 2 raids on the German line. The first was a small affair made up of 30 men under Captain Barles during the evening of the 10th of January 1917. The second raid was much larger and is known today as the Big Raid. It was carried out by 400 men under the command of Captain Lamb. On the 13th of March 1917, it aimed to penetrate the first and second line of defence and then roll up the front northwards to capture the prisoners and destroy defences. The Allied artillery barrage was the heaviest that the men had yet seen. No man's land was covered in an incessant mud, and before the German trench could be reached, the raiders would have to cross a 4-metre wide ditch, which was 1 metre deep, full of water, and lined with barbed wire. German searchlights saw the Australian preparations. At midnight, the Australian barrage opened on the German line. Almost immediately, the Germans returned fire with a barrage of artillery and mortars, and aimed directly at the raiders. The element of surprise was not to be with the attackers. The fire was so intense that only 2 platoons could reach their enemy trench, having to wade through muddy water up to their necks in the pitch dark, all while suffering a hail of grenades. The rest of the men were all struggling to get through the barbed wire. Notwithstanding this, no one thought of retreat, and with curses at every obstacle, the attackers pressed onwards. Lieutenant Sammy Taylor was the officer in charge of the assault, and he soon saw that the attack had failed, and to preserve under the awful conditions would be a further useless sacrifice. He therefore gave his last order, to withdraw. Initially, as the order was passed around, the men refused, and even threatened to shoot whoever had given the order. It was only upon hearing Lieutenant Taylor's respected name that they obeyed the order. Soon after seeing that his order was being carried out, Lieutenant Taylor was killed instantly by a shell. It required much physical strength and stamina to retreat in the morass of no man's land, and with dozens of wounded men, their cries and groans, the bursting shells and the unending rattle of machine guns and rifles, it seemed that the 44th Raiders were doomed to destruction. The searchlights still lit up the scene, and with the German flares, which were now being set up in scores, the scene was as bright as day. Unwounded men worked all night long under terrible conditions to save their wounded comrades, and the morning all but one of the wounded had been rescued, the exception being Corporal Ted Herod, who was badly wounded and captured by the Germans. The 44th Battalion suffered 20 killed and 45 wounded during the raid. Many of the officers and men had received awards for acts of bravery and leadership. Lieutenant Linnett was awarded the Military Cross for rescuing his wounded sergeant, who had been shot in the back and was only a few meters from the German trench. He also rescued 4 other wounded men and was the last member of the raid to retreat. Sergeant Andrews and Sergeant Scarr were both awarded the military medal for going up and down the line, motivating their troops. Private Hurd, as a stretcher bearer, went out into no man's land 5 times under heavy fire and was awarded the military medal. Lance Corporal Baines remained in no man's land for 4 hours under heavy fire in the rescue of wounded men and was mentioned in the dispatches. These are just some of the awards earned by the soldiers during the raid. The Big Raid had been the first major battle that the 44th Battalion had been committed to, but it would not be the last. The casualties suffered in this raid represented only 4% of the losses which the battalion would suffer throughout the course of the war.
Thank you. Throughout the day, the names of the 482 soldiers of the 44th Battalion who paid the supreme sacrifice will be read out. In this particular hour, 4 speakers will each read out 10 of the names. I now call up Christine Tonkin, MLA, the Mayor of South Perth, Aquinas College, and Mr. Jonathan Huston to come and assist me with reading the honour roll.
Corporal Frank Stewart Ellison, contractor from Midland, killed in action on the Western Front on the 4th of October 1917, aged 31 years. Private Alexander Emerson, mill hand from Bimiston, killed in action breaching the Hindenburg Line on the 29th of September 1918, aged 24 years. Private Bernard Lewis Ems, farmhand from Guildford, killed in action at Amontillers on the 28th of January 1917, aged 25. Private Frederick Milton Evans, boxmaker from North Perth, killed in action at Amontillers on the 18th of February 1917, aged 19. Private Donald Ernest Ewers, clerk of Perth, died of wounds during the German spring offensive on the 4th of April 1918, aged 20. Private Cecil Roland Fairhead, farmer from Caballing, killed in action at Plegstedt on the 19th of February 1918, aged 18. Corporal James Farragut, farmer from Perth, killed in action at Warnerton on the 2nd of August 1917, aged 26 years. Lieutenant William George Faulkner, soldier from Perth, killed in action at Clary on the 31st of August 1918, aged 33.
Private Frederick Gillett Feely, wheat lumper from Northam, killed in action in the German spring offensive 2nd of March 1918, aged 34. Private Frederick Octavius Feltham, driver from South Fremantle, died of wounds at Mellencamp 27th of May 1918, age 37. Corporal Theodore William Ferguson, mechanic from Midland, killed at Bassine 24th of June 2017, age 19. Lance Corporal Edward James Ferguson, farmer from 2J, killed in action at Albert, 25th of August 1918, age 27. Private Sydney Fernyholt, labourer from Norwood, died of wounds from the Big Raid, 14th of March 1917, age 30. Private Leonard Albany Ferry, miner from Mount Barker, killed in action breaching the Hindenburg Line, 27th of September 1918, age 22. Private Thomas Finlay, boilermaker from New South Wales, killed in action at Messine, 10th of June 1917, age 26. Private Herbert Fisher, farmhand from Guildford, killed in action at Messine, 9th of June 1917, age 25.
Private Albert Fitzgerald, motor mechanic from Kalgoorlie, killed in action during the pursuit, 26th of August 1918, aged 24. Private Henry Arthur Fletcher, striker from Minginoo, died of disease, 29th of November 1916, aged 22. Private John William Florence, contractor from Perth, died of wounds at Warnerton, 2nd of August 1917. Private James Michael Foley, wharfman from Fremantle, died of wounds at Messines, 7th of June 1917, aged 39. Sergeant John Michael Foley, career soldier from Perth, killed in action at Molencourt, 16th of April 1918, aged 30. Private Thomas Charles Forsworth, labourer from Kalgoorlie, killed in action at Passchendaele, 13th of October 1917, aged 45. Private Robert Arthur Foster, farmer from Mount Marshall, killed in action at Messines, 24th of June 1917, aged 29. Sergeant James Francis Foy, labourer from Mount Lawley, killed in actions at Amateurs, 14th of March 1917, age 24.
Private Harold James Fraser, striker from Boulder, died of wounds at Armentières, the 5th of March 1917, aged 21. Corporal Clement Freeson, farmer from Darwin, killed in action at Messine, the 4th of June 1916, aged 26. Private Lewis Spencer Frederick, tent maker from Subiaco, killed in action at Messine, the 13th of July 1917, aged 28. Private Cyril Wainwright Fruish, salesman from Mount Lawley, killed in action at Passchendaele, the 10th of October 1917, aged 28. Private Thomas Leonard Fry, boilmaker from West Perth, killed in action at La Bizère, 30th of March 1918, aged 28. Private Charles Henry Fulsher, milkman from South Perth, killed in action at Messine, the 16th of July 1917, aged 35. Private James Fulsher, railway worker from Gemelling, killed in action at Amiens, 8th of August 1918, aged 50.
Private Norman Bradley Gardner, farmer from Belmont, died of wounds at Passchendaele, 8th of October 1917, aged 20. Private Jack Garnon, labourer from Perth, killed in action during the German Spring Offensive, 28th of. Private Stephen Grace, labourer from Lenora, killed in action at Hamel, 4th of July 1918, aged 28. Private Richard Henry Gatley, miner from Coolgardie, died of wounds at Moreland Court, 4th of June 1918, aged 26. Private Norman James Gull, engine cleaner from Bayswater, killed in action at Warnerton, 1st of August 1917, age 19. Lance Corporal Robert Oliver Gay, miner from Boulder, killed in action breaching the Hindenburg Line, 29th of September 1918, age 19. Private James Gill, miner from Boulder, killed in action at Moreland 3rd of June 1918, age unknown. Private Charles Thomas Gillam, farmhand from Cranbrook, died of wounds during the German Spring Offensive, 3rd of April 1918, age 24.
Thank you to our honour roll readers. You may now be seated. They were Australian soldiers who were experts in close combat. They were physically and mentally tough, compassionate and courageous. They led by example. They strove to take the initiative. They were committed to learning and working for their team. They believed in trust, loyalty and respect for their country, their mates and the army. The rising sun was their badge of honour. They are Australian soldiers, always. Thank you to all those who helped in reading out the honour roll. I now call on Aquinas College to read out the story of the Plugsteert wood sector.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Johnston, and I'm from Aquinas College. This morning, I will be telling the story of the Plugsteert wood sector. From the Armentières sector, the battalion moved northwards and took over the Plugsteert sector in the middle of March 1917. The change from the mud of the previous sector was a welcome one. The trenches were much better made and in places were reinforced with concrete. The nearby forest provided cover from enemies further than 100 metres away. The rats, which had also been plentiful at Armentières, were numerous, hungry and cheeky. Snipers improved their shooting with revolvers and rifles by firing at rats foraging in the woods behind the trench. This at last brought verbal and hasty requests from the frontline garrison, couched in fiery Aussie language, and to the effect they did not mind the shooting from their front, but that the shooting from the rear must stop at once, or there'd be another war. One interesting invention at this sector was the steel tree. A wooden tree had been destroyed one night, and a steel copy had been built to replace it. It looked identical to the wooden tree, and could be used as an observation post, with the Germans not noticing the difference. The usual trench routine was carried on. The whole life of the digger now consisted of days of monotony, punctuated by moments of intense fear. The 44th Battalion was lucky enough not to be raided by the Germans. However, the 42nd Battalion, which nearby, came under constant raiding. One night, the Germans tried out a gas attack on the 44th Battalion lines, firing 7,000 shells in one night. Due to the nearby trees, the gas did not dissipate quickly and instead hung in the air. Marvelously, only 3 men were wounded in this attack, and this is a testament to the quality of the gas masks and the discipline of the men. Digging in the Plugsteert sector was the main recreation for the diggers. While digging a new trench in the woods, B Company unearthed 50 silver and copper coins from the 11th century. There were wooden crosses dotted all over the woods from famous British and German regiments that had suffered from close quarters fighting. After 2 months of small-scale fighting at Plugsteert Wood, the 44th Battalion was withdrawn in May 1917 in preparation for the fight at Messines. The battalion had been in the trenches now for 6 months on a roster of 6 days in and 6 days out. The march back was intense as all the soldiers' boots had been soaked through and heavily damaged. The first day's march was 22 miles over cobblestone roads with full pack and was a killer for the diggers. The march continued for another 2 days before the battalion was able to rest in French barns near the village of Columbie. During the 2 months at Ploegsteert, the battalion had suffered relatively minor casualties of only 12 killed.
Thank you. I now invite Aquinas College to read out the poem Jim.
We were mates, Jim and I, mates right from the start. From when we went to camp together until he fell, shot through the heart. We joined the same battalion. We trained at Salisbury Camp. And many the weary mile we marched through mud and snow and damp. We had finished up our training and were ordered to the front to join the boys out there in France and help to bear the brunt. We were sitting in a hole out there in no man's land, waiting for the signal to go, at him, man for man. We hopped in his front line trenches and were bombing side by side when a sniper's bullet copped him. That's how my cobber died. He was just a rough Australia one, the Frenchie's Cole, Trey Bon. And I miss him something awful, and am lonely now he's gone.
Thank you. We will now lay the wreaths at the base of the memorial. Wreaths will be laid by Christine Tonkin, MLA, the Mayor of South Perth, Greg Milner, Mr. Jonathan Huston, Aquinas College, the 44th Australian Infantry Battalion Memorial, and 703 Squadron City of Fremantle, Australian Air Force Cadets. Upon the conclusion of the laying of the official wreaths, I invite anyone in the audience to also lay a wreath if they have one. The piper from the Scotch College Pipe Band will now begin the lament. I now ask that everyone please stand for the reciting of the Ode and remain standing for the last post, the 1-minute silence, the rouse, the Australian Royal Anthem and the Australian National Anthem. All of these, except the Australian Royal Anthem, will be played by the Scotch College Pipe Band. They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them, lest we forget. Thank you all. Please remain standing for the dismounting of the catafalque party. Thank you. Please be seated. I now invite the Memorial Director to give the closing address. I also ask for everyone to take part in a formal photo in front of the memorial at the conclusion of this specific ceremony.
That is the end of the ceremony. Thank you all for attending. To end this ceremony, I leave you with a quote by Captain Longmore regarding the 44th Battalion. While memory lives, however, the fighting 44th will never die. To be with them over there was a privilege and an honour, a glorious page in any man's life. And when the final evening comes to us all, and the last pipe has been smoked, it will be of the comrades who wore the blue and white oval patch that will be proudly thinking. Theirs was a tradition that Australia will do well to perpetuate, whilst there's a growing generation of free men and women left to be inspired by it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are those free men and women. Please join me in the group photo.